our Massachusetts Student Information SIMS reporting. There is some useful data on that, so you can see what the numbers are that we've reported. These are in-district students only. Some of the numbers I think are worth noting. 106 students receiving services as English learners. 48 of those recently arrived in the United States. 154 eligible, 12 not choosing to participate. 38 military families. 43 students ages 3 to 5 receiving special education services. 715 students ages 6 through 21 receiving special education students. 235 students on 504 plans. 53 students getting Title I support, which is reading primarily, Jen, for at this point.
Yep.
729 first language not English. 729 currently enrolled students, first language not English. And then you've got the racial and ethnic breakdown of our student body as well, which I think is very interesting to show how increasingly diverse we are.
Judy, do you know how the first language not English, is that larger than last year, about the same? Do you have any idea?
Well, because the number is larger, I don't know if the percentage is larger as our student body grows. Jen, do you have a sense for?
No, because those aren't all students receiving services.
Right.
They're, most of those students are out of the program, so.
Okay.
But I think it just speaks to our increasing diversity. Students might enroll here who learned a language other than English, or speak one at home,
Right.
Which is great. I mean, it's just so nice to have so much diversity.
English language learners' recent arrival, what is that time frame? Is that like within the last 2 years, or?
Not
So
sure.
the coding, I think, is in 2 years.
2 years.
And then they're, technically, well, they have a new name, a FEL, but they were a FLEP before, which is the former English learners.
FL, okay. Now it's FL?
It's FEL, F-E-L, former English
learner.
learners.
So they've
Just next
learned?
week, they'll change their names again, so.
Okay.
Awesome.
That means they
Good to
were
know.
receiving services, and now that they've learned.
Yes, so
and
we
they're-
still monitor them,
Mhm.
but they don't receive direct services.
The FELs,
Mhm.
so the 48 don't receive services, the
Oh,
100.
I'm assuming a lot of those might.
The recent arrivals would receive services.
Okay.
The FELs would not.
So it's not, is it the same, sorry,
Okay.
is the 48 a subset of the 166?
I think
Yes.
so.
Yes,
Okay.
that's what I was thinking.
Yeah.
Okay.
And the 729, the 166 is a subgroup of the 729?
Yes.
Yes.
That's, yeah.
Yeah,
I thought you
We
just
made the
might want to
pyramid.
see the numbers
No.
behind the percentages that
that's
appear
great.
on the DESE website.
that's great.
Can I ask a question?
Sure.
How do we get the number for military families? Where does that come from? That seems very
Jen
low.
might know.
Sure.
I'm surprised how low that number is.
We are now required to ask that question when families are doing enrollment. So when we move to online, it would actually pop up and you wouldn't be able to move on until you answer that question, the question about photographs and videos. Bless you.
Excuse me. Thank you.
So if you're but if you've already been a Winchester Public School family for a while, you have kids in the district, they're already registered, they're in the system. Like, I'm assuming we have a lot of families with moms and dads in reserves, for instance. We
Yep.
may not be counting some families, right?
So those should have been in the back-to-school packets. It's like a one question. So they may have put it in schools on a form they already had, or they may have done a one-page insert.
I think
Is
that
like
means
on the
active
student
military.
data information
Yes.
form?
Yes.
Yeah, okay.
It's on your student data information form that you're supposed to update each year.
And sign off.
And also Joanne Doherty, who does the student data, sent out a questionnaire to parents back in September
To ask them that question.
to ask
Yep.
that question.
Okay.
Question?
No, I received the same.
You received it? Okay. Did you say yes or no?
I have a question, if that's all right. So, Judy, we used to, when we looked at enrollment numbers, we'd have also historical.
Yeah, that's the official enrollment that I do for the budget.
Yeah, so it's just helpful because it gives us a sense as to where we're going, and it's sort of, it's This is very helpful. I really appreciate your doing this, but that really gives us a big picture of it. And so that would be helpful to see at some point.
Yes, I
Yeah.
mean, that was, the plan is to do the full report in November as our first meeting in December, probably, just to verify,
Okay.
as I do the final projections for personnel. This is just the very first look to give us a heads up. What we're trying to do is get a sense for, the town manager had done a multi-year budget projection last year and said our increase is likely to be 1.7 million over last year's budget, not taking into account whether we'll get increased Chapter 70 for the kindergarten. Outside of that 1.7 million. So we've got to look at moving forward existing personnel. What is the contract cost of those folks? Where will we have additional non-discretionary positions? So what we're trying to do is sort of get a global big picture, kind of what are going to be the budget drivers this
Sure.
year.
Sure.
And so this is just the very first back of the envelope best guess to say, looks like we're going to have the same number of elementary classrooms unless we suddenly get an influx of lots of kindergartners or lots of move-ins. We monitor it every month and
Yep.
adjust the numbers accordingly. So I will do the same projection that I gave you last year, which was actually taken from what we'd done previous years.
Great.
It's a multi-page kind of comparison of where we are and where we think we're going.
So along those lines too, so this is great because, and I think we've all been trained, we've trained the community as well as ourselves around the number of elementary students. So much so that now as the parents are moving through the system, I think they're asking similar questions about our secondary program. Sort of what are class ratios and class sizes and, and also ratios when it comes to things like support services like nursing and counseling and Excel and SPED. And so I think as we move forward, it would be great to start understanding what that looks like at the secondary level. I'm sure you're going to do that, but it's just a request before you.
Sure, no, I think
Start
that's
that
really
process.
helpful. I mean, this is helpful for me to hear what would be helpful for you as you begin your budget decision-making process.
Yeah.
One of the other reasons I wanted to give this to you so early, in the middle of October, was so you could see what my projected average class sizes are at the elementary level as well. If we have this many students in these many sections, I think it's a little reassuring to see that we don't have any hot spots under this projection. There are a couple of average class sizes of 21 here. There are none of 22. And so we want to make a conservative projection, but not overly conservative. And so this is really just a quick heads up that right now, if I had to have a guess, I would say we'll be adding some staff at the high school.
I would assume that we've been lax in adding staff at the high school, and it's definitely the time has come. So I think as we're having these conversations about budget neutral versus budget adding, it's important for us to see not only long range what's coming up, especially if you have a class of 384 that's making its way up to the high school. It's important to understand that and know that so that we know what our needs are going to be in terms of going for general override.
Exactly, and that's what the budget, we don't have an update today on the budget advisory, but we've had one meeting, and that was one of the main considerations, is trying to estimate our needs in time, that if we were to need an operational override to maintain basic services, that we to do that as quickly as possible and with as much notice as possible.
Great.
So,
Thank you, Judy.
sure.
Right, and Judy, just coming out of the budget advisory, the idea was to accelerate and do our calculation of how much it will cost for all of the staff to move up next year.
Do it early.
Do that. Yeah.
Well, with the contract being settled, we should be able
Right.
to do that fairly early.
Okay. Did somebody have a
I
question?
think Chris had another question.
Are you done?
I am, thank you.
So I have a request.
Mm-hmm.
Actually, before I get to the request. So two questions. Judy, we went back and forth earlier today about VO, so I just want to be sure I was clear on what my question was. So VO was built with 21 classrooms. We added 3, so now it has a theoretical classroom target of 24. However, you've got the 2 preschools. So now it's got 22. And that includes that space you mentioned, that maker space, because that's one of those 3 that we added. So my concern is, with 2 preschools there, we should have 22 classroom spaces available. If we need 23, we're taking something. So that's the question. And you've already taken the makerspace, because that's one of the 3. So it's preschool, makerspace are the 3. That's a question that I have. And then at Lincoln.
Do you want me to
we-
answer that question first?
Sure, go ahead.
So the makerspace would become a classroom under this plan. The makerspace was only used temporarily as a makerspace because it was available, so.
I think you're saying we're still one short.
I
Yeah.
think does the math not suggest we're still 1 short? I'm saying 21 plus the 3. You assume you've got 3 classrooms available. and
So
then-
I think there are
No,
22.
I see Judy's point. If you've got 3 available, give the 2, no, actually I do. I think we're still short 1,
Yeah,
actually.
if
I
we've
get net
taken-
22.
If we've taken 2 for the preschool.
So I think I've only
How does that
added
work?
1 more than we have this year.
Oh,
So
okay.
I'll double check the numbers with Grant.
Okay.
And make sure that this doesn't add 2. The iffy part about kindergarten is we have 3 kindergartens this year at VO, we may need 4.
Right.
We didn't add at any other grade level.
What do we use that room that's off the library for currently?
Technology, it's a small, it's kind of an oddly shaped room, it's a technology
Yeah.
room, we could use that as a classroom if we needed to.
I mean, that was always, I
Yeah.
think when we did the redistricting, it was always the thought that every building would have a technology room and it would give us 1 extra in case.
Yes.
I know that there's some trickiness there. We don't need to get into the weeds,
That's
but.
almost my
Yes.
segue, because I'm going to say something
The
about that.
caveat there, but-
But related to that, so I believe we're running 20 sections at Lincoln this year.
Every room is used at Lincoln, including the room that formerly was used as a classroom, is now being used as a music room.
So Lincoln with a 21 classroom target included the music instructional space, because that had been used for years for classrooms. So I thought they got that back this year.
They
So-
did.
Okay. But when I see 21 for Lincoln,
Mhm.
that suggests to me that Lincoln loses here. Oh, I'm looking at Chris.
Yeah.
It was a good year while it
One
lasted.
year.
It was
I mean,
one
to
year.
me, this suggests they lose the music room again.
Yeah.
Could be.
So my request is, that old model, the old tool that showed all the multiple years and you could see the cohort survival ratios, had a couple of different worksheets or tabs. I'm not sure how it was set up, but there were times when we got the whole packet. So you got the multi-year cover, and then there was a breakdown by elementary school, there was the middle school, there was the high school. But there was a page that was very similar to what you're doing here. It was specific, as I recall, to kindergarten through 5th grade, and it was by school, and it would give, it happened to break it down by decimals, which you may not want to do, but that also included a note on the classroom targets. So that was helpful because we could flag, see, we sort of have 2 hotspots here we talk about. One is the hotspot of what's in the how many kids are in the classroom, and are we above the classroom guidelines? But then the other hotspot is, are we adding more classrooms in a building than we really needed? That was that whole concept of capacity strain. I would like to see the sheet or the worksheet or the tab, whatever it is, from that old model, tweaked to however you'd like to show it. I don't think it had the McCall or Winchester summary, and I agree with Cindy, it's helpful to see this.
Yeah.
I would feel more comfortable if I saw that. I think it's more facile to me to work with that. I'm comfortable with that model, and I just think it shows us a little more information.
Sure. We can put our target, number of classrooms, not including spaces that are currently, you want the original targets, or do you want the target,
The ones we last voted.
the ones you last voted? Okay.
Yeah.
All right, we can do that.
Yep.
I just would say, I think you coined the term, it was design capacity or something like that.
We
had-
didn't, we didn't use capacity.
We were always skittish of using the word capacity, so I called it classroom targets.
Okay.
Classroom
For
targets.
for that very important reason, which is, it's very hard to say what's more important. Is it the number of spaces in a building that are intended to be classrooms, or is it the number of kids in spaces? And the reality is, we're always concerned about our actual class sizes, so that's why we would generally repurpose a space. So it would suggest our priority is class sizes. Secondarily, we can take specialist spaces, and we've done that. But when we do that, we want to know that we're doing that. Because
Sure.
then we have a way to sort of express what we call the capacity strain in the building.
Sure.
Michelle, you have anything to ask her? I just also, just on the second page, this is district enrollment that is going to be at the school department website. This is our official October one, that everyone will, anyone out in the community who wants to just gets curious and goes and looks on the school department website will see this. Okay.
But does the DC website have a column for out-of-district placement? Am I imagining that?
I don't know.
There are,
Let me
Is that what
rephrase.
Winchester Public
Let
is?
me pose it as a question. How does out-of-district placement look on, how are those kids represented here, and what does the SP column stand for?
okay, so this is our official district enrollment, and the out-of-district students are in the top row, where it says Winchester Public.
Ah,
All of the other
that's
students
it.
are enrolled in a school, and the top column, which has 55 students, those are our students who are out of district.
Okay.
And the SP?
The top row is out-of-district.
SP is when students
Or after
age,
18.
after age 18,
Right.
when they would be of graduation age,
But we're still providing services.
but we're still providing services to
Until they're
21.
21.
Got it.
Is it 21? It was 25, or 21?
No, 21.
But that doesn't reflect whether we're serving them in or out of district.
So, if you go to Winchester High School, it doesn't list them there. They're kind of, a lot of those students are students who aren't really taking classes. I think a lot of them doing vocational programs.
Right.
So they might be in the high school for some part of their day, or they might be somewhere else.
Right.
But they're beyond graduation age, beyond age grade 12.
Okay. Shall we move on?
And I just want to, and I just want to praise the special education staff members for creating really robust in-district programs, because to have 4,700 students enrolled and only 55 in out-of-district
Amazing.
is kind of amazingly small. If you were to look at a similar chart, we'd have twice as many out-of-district with the, those are all our students, even if they're placed out of district. We hope to have them back if we have appropriate programs. We can't have appropriate programs for everybody. And so it is just very, very helpful in terms of budgeting.
And let's make sure we highlight that at town meeting.
We will.
Okay, so the McCall project. Did you want to run, am I
Sure.
skipping something? No, okay.
So you may recall that we're out of space, as we were just talking about at the elementary level. We are similarly out of space at McCall. There was a lovely article in the Winchester Star with photographs showing how we have converted every inch of space at McCall to the best possible use, including small group space, specialist space, carved up the library for some space. We are out of space. So McCall Expansion Project has two parts. First part gets us 3 classrooms. That's phase 1, and then 6 additional classrooms in phase 2, and a little bit of teachers' workroom space by converting a storage space. It's not really appropriate for a classroom, but it could be good teacher workspace. Also some additional space for athletics, because we are in dire need of more team space, locker room space that you feel gets very heavily used. So you'll be hearing lots about this for fall town meeting. We'll be seeking some funding. And when we met with the other boards in town, we did receive a lot of strong support for the McCall expansion project, but there was a suggestion from the Board of Selectmen that we engage an expert opinion to be sure that our enrollment projections were accurate. We had 2 sets of enrollment projections, one just sort of the cohort survival census carry forward model, and then another that took into account likely known and historical building projects, conversions of single-family homes, 40B likely projects, and the impact of those. We have engaged the University of Massachusetts Donahue Institute. They're on a fast track to finish this at the beginning of November for town meeting. They'll give us their expert opinion on the district's master plan enrollment projections, and I think that tonight there needs to be an additional vote on the town meeting warrant article.
Right, we now have a number. We're Article 32 on the town meeting warrant, and after some back and forth with Town Hall and Bond Council, we want to make a very small wording change to the motion, just to make it completely clear that the $1.6 million appropriation can be used for construction of Phase 1, not just for design, not just for architectural services, but for the whole shebang to finish it. And then Judy and Chris and I worked on getting the background note that goes in that booklet that goes to town meeting members ahead of time, to put in some more detail there without making it overly long, just to give people a full picture of, why we're asking for this money and why we need it in the sort of sequence that we do, so we can get everything finished. And also try to do as much construction during the summer as we can to minimize the disruption to the students who are going to school at McFall. And also just to let them know about the UMass Donahue Institute review, or, peer review of the enrollment projections, because that will be coming out right at town meeting, right before town meeting. So that's, that's it in a nutshell. We already voted this motion before, but just to confirm that this is what we support and what's going to town meeting. I just wanted to have a confirmatory vote, or just re-vote it tonight.
Do you want a motion?
Yeah, thank you.
I move that we approve Article 32, McCall Design and Construction language as presented, dated today.
Does that make sense?
Second.
Those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Yep, thanks. Something else I was gonna say on that, but I forget.
Do you
what
want
it
to talk
was.
about the there's a note here, Judy, number 2, the FinCom meeting on Phase 2?
Yes, did you want to talk about that?
Or is that something you're going to talk
Well, I
about
was
under
gonna-
chair report?
Yeah, that's what I was gonna put in chair report.
Okay.
Yeah. All right, so, MCAS. MCAS 2.0.
Jen, could you just get rid of that warning on the,
Oh, the
for
warning.
somebody? Thank you. So hopefully,
There we go.
Susan, have we finalized all the backup
Yes.
language?
this worked a few minutes ago.
Do that, because I think we're
All right,
done with
we
that.
may, Jen, we may have to have you drive for me. Thank you.
It's not
I'll do
the,
it.
thinking
I
of
mean,
a vote. Yeah, it's fine.
I'll do it.
Yes.
I trust you.
The
You
answer
got it?
is
Yes.
yes.
Okay, thank you.
You know what I'm doing. All right, I clear out of this and go to a separate one?
No, it's actually on the same one. It's just scrolling down. So if you want to just go back to, oh, that's why I've been signed out.
Oh.
Oh, okay, sorry about that. Just take a second.
Technology.
Technology.
So great,
John
except when
Evans
it's not.
set this up for me today, and he said, this computer is on its last legs.
Do you want to dim these lights on this wall
Yeah,
or
just a
no?
little.
Yeah, please,
Yeah,
for those
maybe.
of us who are old and blind over here.
How's that? Better for you now, honey? Maybe you need glasses.
Someday we'll have laptops here, we could just look at them.
Just see it.
Yeah.
They'll just rise up from the table like Star Trek. They'll come
Like
out
Star
and
Trek.
they'll
Or
go
flat
down.
screens.
Yeah,
better.
exactly.
Yeah. You guys are dreaming.
Beam ourselves into 2020 in a completed building.
Yeah.
So the parent letters for this, they haven't gone out yet, or have they?
They just arrived.
Today. Sorry, I didn't get mine yet.
Sound like there's a
Didn't
refrigerator.
get mine yet.
Okay.
Hold out there.
All right, let's try. So, here we are. Hope this will work.
Okay.
I thought it was important because the test has changed, and parents will be receiving a different kind of report that I just briefly update school committee on what has changed. So the test that our students took last spring is an updated next generation MCAS. They're calling it next generation MCAS. Some people call it MCAS 2.0. It focuses more strongly on critical thinking and application of knowledge and multi-step problem solving. So for most students, they would find it more challenging than the previous MCAS test. And it's meant to give a clear signal of readiness for the next grade level, or at the high school, ultimately for college and career. The test used for the high school is still called the legacy test. So the high school test is the same test we've had, and also the science test is a legacy test. It is designed to be given on a computer. Our students took the test primarily paper and pencil, except for grades 4 and 8, I believe, last year. Next year, we'll only have 1 or 2 grades taking it paper and pencil, and all the rest will be taking it by computer. The newest tests are in English language arts and math only, and in science, as I said, it's still a legacy test. The state worked hard to equate the scores for whether you took it on paper or via computer, and they've adjusted the results accordingly. And so for our students, there's no advantage or disadvantage for having taken it on either format. The scores are now given in achievement levels, and the parent report looks a little bit different. There are aggregate results for each school, the district, and the state. There's actually a pretty easy to use school and district score report. If you go to the DESE website, you can click on, and it gives you all of the information that you would like to see under the assessment tab on the school and district profiles. So it used to be that students were rated as advanced, proficient, needs improvement, or warning. For many, many years, those were the 4 categories. And really the difference between advanced and proficient is that students at the advanced level demonstrated a comprehensive and in-depth knowledge and could solve problems in a sophisticated way. And proficient, it was more about a solid understanding, ability to solve a wide variety of problems. Needs improvement is a partial understanding, and warning is minimal understanding. The next generation categories are achievement levels, and they've changed them. So the highest achievement level is exceeding expectation. Performed at this level exceeded grade level expectations and has demonstrated mastery. Meeting expectations is on track to succeed in the current grade. Partially meeting is a student who performed and partially met grade level expectations, and the level suggests that the school, in consultation with the student's parent or guardian, should consider whether the student needs additional academic assistance to succeed. So the difference between partially meeting and meeting could be 1 or 2 questions. So there is a scale that will appear on the report that will give the parent and the teacher some indication of which students might be having difficulty. And not meeting is a student who's having pretty serious concerns. We have very, very few of those in the district, fortunately. But there are some students who aren't performing at grade level, and we know it because they have a variety of issues they're dealing with. They could have cognitive impairments or other learning disabilities, and they're just not there yet. Doesn't mean they won't get there. But I will point out that we use a wide variety of information about student achievement when determining whether students need assistance. And a single test taken on 1 or 2 days last spring is not the only indicator of where students are academically or what their potential is. And so this is a simple test to give us some information, but is really only a fraction of a percentage of the information we need to know how to help students succeed. Here's what a typical parent report will look like. This child, Jonathan Doe, is exceeding expectations with a score of 541. You can see the little scale on the right. He's solidly within exceeding expectations, but not all the way over to the right. And then at the bottom of that first page of the report, it says how this child has performed compared to the school, the district, and the state. So you can see the scaled scores at the bottom left. And then it tells how the child performed on the test in each reporting category. So for math, this was a math test. Operations and algebraic thinking, 7 out of 10. Numbers and operations, 10 out of 10. Fractions, 5 out of 5. Measurement and data, 8 out of 9. And geometry, 3 out of 4. And it says, you know, how many points were earned on each of the questions. And then you can go to the DESE website and see the questions. And so it's a way for parents to see what was asked of the students. So the big question people are going to ask is, why did my child score proficient on the older MCAS, or the legacy MCAS, but only partially meeting expectations this year? Is my child suddenly not as high performing? And that may or may not be true. In general, the new standards are more rigorous, and they've reset how they define meeting expectations. And so what the suggestion is that parents should look closely about where the score falls. And if it's not close to meeting, then there should be a conversation. But DESE reminds us that this is a baseline year and should not, and the scores on 2017 should not be compared to previous year's scores. Here's where they projected the results would be, and you can see they expected only half of the students to be meeting expectations or exceeding expectations. And you can see the green at the top is where, at each grade level, in ELA and math, they're expecting to be advanced. This is not the pattern we see in Winchester. We have very high-performing students. In general, lots of our students are performing in the exceeding category, the vast majority in meeting, and then partially meeting is a smaller number and not meeting is a very small number. And remember that when you're looking at percentages, if you looked at the enrollment data, you can see that at some schools at some grade levels, only 50 students took an exam. And so the performance of 1 or 2 or 3 students can really change your percentage of overall performance. And so we don't over-rely on a single year worth of data, particularly with small elementary schools. The baseline year will allow us to compare going forward for achievement levels, but we can still look at growth. And one of the things I'm most proud about is how much our students have grown. And you can measure growth based on how students who scored similarly on the last test did on this test. And you can see that our students continue to show lots of academic growth. So the other thing that the DESE wants us to remember is that the projected results look more like our NAEP results, which is the exam that tells us where we stand against other states and internationally. And we, at 4th grade reading, we were first in the nation. 4th grade math, we were tied for first. 8th grade reading, we were tied for first. And 8th grade math, we were tied for first. So the NAEP is a 4th and an 8th grade test. And so our standards are higher than all of the other states. We're performing higher than the other states. And so parents should not be as concerned with having fewer students in the advanced category. It just means that the bar is pretty high in Massachusetts. This is what the legacy MCAS test result looked like. You can see that in some grade levels, like grade 10 ELA, half of the kids across the state are advanced and so forth. It didn't look like the same pattern as the NAEP at 4 and 8. And so much like they sort of realigned the SAT a few years ago, this is a realignment of the MCAS. The other thing I think that's really very important is to not make assumptions about student performance that it's strictly a content area or a skill-based deficiency when students are struggling, but looking at non-academic barriers to learning. As we saw on our youth risk behavior survey, and we continue to see in our schools, that students with high levels of anxiety, depression, trauma, all of those things have a very significant impact on their ability to learn. And so paying attention to the social emotional needs of our students is paramount. Fortunately, most of our students don't have issues like their peers across the state with poverty, suspension, homelessness, and other issues. But our students face a variety of non-academic barriers, and we need to pay as close attention to those as to the academics. The other thing I think that's important to note is that we will look closely at the item analysis and the strand organization within each of the ELA math and science results overall for the district and by school to see where there are areas of strength and weakness, to look at our curriculum alignment as Dr. L&M is working with several groups and I'm working with foreign language. We are constantly striving to ensure that we have a balance between focusing on what is going to be tested and going above and beyond that so our students are challenged to the maximum potential. And so making sure that our students actually have been exposed to the content and skills that are needed without teaching to the test. After they finish taking their exams, probably to get into college, many people will never take another test again for the rest of their lives. A few will take some form of a test. But getting our kids ready to be good test takers is not a life skill. And so we, again, just want to use this as one measure. We're really proud of their overall achievement. The comparison, as you probably saw in the Boston Globe, our students in general performed in the top 5% of all students in the state on almost every exam. In many cases, the top 1%. So our students in many grade levels are outperforming their 99% of their peers across the state. So that's something to celebrate, but a slightly lower percentage ranking on some tests is no indication of anything other than some statistical anomaly in my mind. And so we're proud of their overall achievement, but we would not sacrifice creativity and collaboration and critical thinking in order to do more test prep. So that's our philosophy. So in terms of accountability, you might remember a few years ago, folks were really concerned about No Child Left Behind and some of the federal mandates around labeling schools. Since our schools are all performing at the very top level in the state, our accountability status has never been an issue. If we had a small percentage of students not take the test, that could have an impact on our accountability status, but because this is a baseline year, there's no accountability status for elementary or middle schools. Our high school continues to be incredibly high performing and is a level 1 school, continues to be a level 1 school. So if you want to learn more, there's an MCAS parents page. If you go to the doe.mass.edu and just search for MCAS, there's also a parent guide and some information will come with the test reports. So, Jen, is there anything that I should have said but didn't about MCAS?
I don't think so.
All right, the only other thing in your packet, so I've given you the individual school reports that so you can see, and I'll be happy to answer any questions that you might have. You can see how high performing our students are. Behind that, though, are some graphs here that show student growth. And for example, in English Language Arts grades 3 through 8, if we don't blow away, you can read this. The median student growth percentile from 0 to 100 is across the bottom. To the left is the students meeting or exceeding expectations. And your goal always is, in your 4 quadrants, to be in the upper right-hand quadrant, to be both high growth and high achievement. And you can see, if this were a colored version, you could see what each of these dots represents, but clearly they're pretty well clustered, well above the median SGP of 50.
And we're too cheap to print in color.
And I'm thrifty, and I save budget money where I can.
We're a growing district.
But crazy enough to print on one side only. But anyway.
Well,
Oh, touche.
I think the gauntlet
We gotta
has been
figure it
thrown
out.
down, and I will find some way to out-thrift everyone sitting at this table.
Me too. Yeah.
Jen doesn't own a printer. She doesn't print anything.
Good.
That was good,
Let's
Susan.
make the move.
We'll make the move. So, but at the bottom of this page, you can see grade 4 that the percent of students meeting or exceeding expectations was 79% district-wide, that the median student growth percentile was 69, which is pretty extraordinary and higher than it's been. Last year, our growth percentiles were more high 50s to low 60s. And then on the next page, you can see lots of low 60s there in 3 through 8. The high school test was even higher.
Yeah.
The first,
56?
What number? 57?
let's see.
56? I have English language arts.
So right after, where do you have it
Number on the
numbered?
very bottom of the,
On the left-hand
Packet.
side, there's a page number.
Where do you see it?
I'm not sure.
56. My version does not, alas, lacks page numbers. So,
Mine doesn't have a name.
I don't know, Frida.
Yeah, I don't know.
I don't know.
Yours has it?
I think
I
you
do.
printed these in 2 batches and you didn't paginate my batch. But in any case, it is on page 56, bottom of page 60. This is all grades 3
Don't
through 8
worry,
growth.
we're not blaming you.
No color, lack of pagination.
You said
Single
56?
Didn't mean it this way. Okay.
We got it, Frida. Page 56 at the bottom.
Page
Yeah.
56, okay.
Okay.
3 through 8, ELA.
So you can see where our students are clearly in the high growth, high achievement quadrant. At the bottom, there's a table. So it says grade 4, median student growth, how many students were tested, how many met or exceeded expectations. And then on the next page, it's the rest of the chart. And you can see that our student growth percentiles are fairly high consistently across grades 3 through 8. There's no student growth percentile for science because they don't do it in consecutive years. It's grades 5 and 8, and then 10 or wherever in high schools, 9 or 10 generally. Science is taken. So it is.
Can I ask a quick question?
Sure.
This student growth percentile measure
Yeah.
against
We know
the old
student growth.
MCAS though, correct? And even though we're not supposed
So here's the thing. It's not measuring.
Yes, see, I had the same question. If it's growth and this is the baseline year, how
Right.
do they
But we're not
compare it?
supposed
Your
to
last
compare it to
slide
the old
said,
test.
student growth percentage can be measured across multiple years.
Right.
but
Because.
two different
Because,
Because,
And here is the statistical challenge. There's one statistician at the table who's going to listen carefully to this. So.
You want it to be.
Lies, damn lies, and statistics, right?
yep.
Yes.
So, student growth percentile is determined by how well students do who are in the same category last time. So say you're a student who scored high advance last time. You get almost all the questions right. There is an expectation that all of the students who scored like you would get a certain score on the next test, whatever that test is or how it's
Okay.
measured in the same content area. And if you score lower than other students who scored advanced last time about at the same level you did, then your growth will be less.
because you're being measured against your peers.
Because you're being measured against your peers and not the test.
your peers based on.
Does that make
the
sense?
Test last year.
Based on how they did last time.
Right.
So, you might ask, well, if you're one of those really high-performing students and you just flip a little bit,
Right.
it shows that you have like very low growth. But in reality, you just got one more question wrong than you did last time.
Or vice versa.
Yeah.
Right. So some students who did poorly last time for whatever reason, they were having a bad
Right.
day, could show a lot of growth.
Right,
But because this measures all the growth of all the students,
right.
and it's pretty consistent,
And
and you
it's
can
not
see the
student to
cluster,
student. Right.
then I think it can demonstrate that we're adding value, that students are progressing, and it's a good news story.
Right.
Okay.
Okay, does that make sense? Kind of?
Yeah, it helps.
Okay, good.
I mean, to me, the, part of the fundamental thing to remember is that this is a test designed to evaluate like whole schools, whole grade levels, large
Districts,
number,
yeah.
districts,
Yeah.
third grade in the whole state. And so the more granular you get, the less, what's the word? Valid it is.
Meaningful?
Meaningful, yeah. So,
Right.
and that MCAS was instituted at the same time that Chapter 70 was, and the idea was, okay, the state is going to put more money into education, and to be sure that districts were using that money effectively, we were going to have tests to see how the students are doing. So you're kind of testing the students to see how the adults are performing. It's really not about judging the students.
Or
We
I would
hope.
argue an individual school to a certain degree as well, because it only measures one measure of each individual
One moment,
school.
yeah.
Whereas there are multiple measures that really tell you if a school is a happy place to be, a social, emotionally good place to be, and this is only one measure
Right.
of an individual school as well,
Right, so
So,
And
what I
only
would
in
caution,
and only in one way.
what I would caution parents against is going to look at their own elementary school and saying,
Right.
why in 5th grade, let's see, why in 4th grade at Lincoln School did Lincoln School 4th graders score at the 99th percentile, and at another school, somebody scored at the 97th percentile? And really, there's no I mean, it's really about giving us an indicator about how it doesn't make us feel better that a lot of kids across the state really struggle.
Right.
We're really worried about the students in Winchester and how well they're doing. And we're focused on continuous improvement. But from year to year, from grade to grade, all of our schools have highs and lows in terms of where they stand in relation to each other that I don't think have a lot of significance. If we see, again, we'll look at the item analysis. If we see that there's a gap in something that we should have taught but didn't at a certain school, then we'll address that the next year. But it's, our schools are very, very close to one another in terms of their overall percentile achievement level and the percentage of kids who are scoring at advanced proficient or the new categories exceeds expectations and meets expectations. And the tests that come home to parents are just an indicator of something that happened many months ago. And so, again, worth a conversation, but not something to be unduly concerned about. So questions? I feel so refreshed by the monsoon that just been.
Yes. Blast of fresh air.
So.
Yeah, yes.
So, I hear what you're saying, and I'm totally buying into this as just a way of clear signal for readiness, which I'm really grateful for, because that's what's important. So first, as a comment, what we do measure in terms of what schools kids get into and whether or not it's their first choice, I think that becomes more critical now, because that we're saying is a better indication of our success throughout this entire process. Let's make sure we continue that.
Mm-hmm.
But the couple things I want to make sure that I understand is, what are we doing?
Mhm.
Because this is kind of saying, don't overreact, don't do
Yeah.
anything about this, just accept it as another measure. But so what are we doing? So it does say in here that if your child receives a score that says he needs improvement, or worse, if he's failing to take in the content, it says that the teachers and the parents should be starting a conversation of what they're gonna do. So are we working with the teachers to make sure that they're prepared to do that, and they're not gonna dismiss the conversation
Yeah.
as we don't pay attention to those?
Right. So the number of students involved who are not meeting is sometimes 0 at some grade levels. Sometimes it's 1 or 2 students. Sometimes it's students in specialized programs who we know aren't there yet. So we have lots of interventions in the district. So every school has a teacher resource team that meets regularly and will have met already on the preliminary MCAS scores for kids who are shown to have been having some difficulty. We look at their overall achievement levels in class, we look at social emotional issues, and there's an intervention plan that is put into place for students who are having difficulty. We have reading specialists at every school who provide reading support for kids who, on multiple measures, show that they're not at grade level for reading expectations. We put in the new STEM coordinator at the elementary level who's providing some coaching. The reading teachers also provide some literacy coaching. Lots of professional development, and Jen can speak to that. She had another differentiated instruction class today. There are co-teaching classes, so a lot of the kids who are not meeting expectations or partially meeting will be on an ed plan or a 504 already, and we'll take a look at whether their accommodations and modifications are appropriate. So there are lots of levels of intervention that are already happening. This is just another piece to be sure that we're not letting things slide, that we're addressing any difficulties that students are having. There are EL services for English language learners, and obviously special education staff members and co-teaching. The percentage of students who are in co-taught classrooms who did extraordinarily well in the MCAS is something we can be proud of. That in the past, those students would have been having pull-out services, but they're achieving at higher levels, especially at the high school in the math classes that are co-taught. Jen, what was the percentage of kids who?
I can't remember off the top of my head, but it's higher numbers than they've ever had.
More students scoring advanced in the co-taught classes than ever before. And so not just aiming to meet expectations, but exceeding expectations in many cases as well. So I guess the other thing that I didn't say is that we disaggregate this data, we look at each population. How did the English learners do? How did the students who are identified as having special needs do? And we examine those as groups to be sure that we've met the needs of all students. So we have lots of interventions in place, but I think the test scores generally take care of themselves if you have very solid classroom teachers who work hard to meet individual needs. You have reasonable class sizes. That's a big assist with that. And I think additional supports for social emotional learning are a guaranteed element in improving the success for a great number of students.
Can I ask, though, to Chris's question, though, specifically, are teachers prepared and supported to have those conversations with parents? In other words, that's sort of how I was taking your... we do have all the supports you just described. I love
Right.
everything you said.
Right.
But, we encourage parents, they have a question, first thing you do is you go to your teacher. So are teachers prepared to have those conversations? Are they supported to have those conversations with parents who, you may have a kid who's not TRT, but maybe the first red flag is actually an MCAS score, maybe.
So we got preliminary MCAS scores in the summer, and so we would only have those for incoming fourth graders, last year's third graders.
Yep.
Fourth, fifth, sixth, seventh, eighth, and then the high school would have the eighth grade scores, so, but essentially all of the kids in high school pass. So, and it's a different test. So the concern really is 3 through 8. Those teachers were given the scores of the students in their class. So they already know who's flagged as having had, they may not have had the level, but they knew which kids had difficulty on the test. We only just got the final information this October 16th, I think. So because this is the first year of the test, took a while for them to sort of get the proficiency levels to us. But yes, I think, and Jen, I don't know if you want to speak to this. Do you think classroom teachers are prepared if parents have questions about the scores for students who are not yet meeting to put a plan into place to help address that?
Sure. I mean, our history tells us that it is a very, very small minority that this is the first red flag ever. So those conversations are probably already in place.
Okay.
Occasionally it does happen, but typically that's more about what happened the testing day. So there are kids that we already expect because they were upset or it was
Yep.
stressful to take the test, that they might pop as a red flag for the first time. We know they have the skills, they didn't show it in the test.
Okay.
So.
Yep.
So, can we put the transition from 8th to 9th, so the testing was done back in middle school, and the kids were perhaps identified and already, so, but now in the 9th grade, they should be on, how we kind of identifying that? I mean, what struck me is that there's like, when it's 80s and 90s, it seems like that's a small portion of people, they seem to be like almost like 27%, and on that big a class, that's like 100 kids that are not fully, proficient, so I'm hoping that there was an effort to try to relay that to the
Yeah, I think they try to work pretty closely with those things, and also that's statewide, that's what shows up, so this is back to statistics, and what do they do? The middle schools always score much lower, there's all this urgency that they're not gonna make it, and then suddenly the high school score, this is across the state, not just in Winchester, although it happens here too, that it's not, we don't find it an accurate reflection of where they are with their middle school. So the high school teachers come in and they're not as concerned about the level where they are as the scores would indicate that. But the departments, especially math and English, work really closely on that.
Anybody else?
Just have one question. So we have, up to this point, been a level 2 district because of a couple of schools, whereas others are independently level 1s. So did I understand you right when you say we're sort of held harmless here with 2.0? What about, do you have a sense from DC, will districts get leveled next year? Okay, so, okay.
And so we have a very high baseline
Yeah,
in comparison.
Yeah.
I mean, being in the top 5% in the state on this result
yeah.
gives us a pretty high baseline to start with. So there's always room for growth. And as the high school test changes in, 2 years, I think, Jen? 2, 3 years? That's what they say. The high school test is very easy for our students to do very well. Significant majority of our kids are advanced on both, so it's an easy bar. Does it give a good indication of their readiness for college or career? Probably, because almost all of our kids go on to, 4-year colleges, the majority to very selective colleges. So I think it matches up with their readiness for that. And Chris said earlier, are our students getting into one of their top 3 choices in schools? Is it a good fit for them? Are they happy when they're there? Are they successful? That's an indicator of success. Getting more longitudinal data about whether they're able to manage the stress of college life and are able to work independently and make good choices. All of those things, I think, are measures we need to track after graduation so that we can be sure we're preparing them for the world and not just for college. Although, the 2 young men who spoke tonight, the thing that I love about the Superintendent's Award are they're so balanced. They found their passions. They know what they're good at. And we've given them room to explore those things and to be successful and to value those. And so I feel that that's a mark of success. It's not about how high their GPAs are, although they're both extremely high-performing students. But I think we have a lot of work to do in the social emotional realm. And so I'm going to keep waving that flag and say, doesn't matter if you're in the 99th percentile if you are bitterly unhappy and anxious and depressed. And so we've got to keep working on that.
Did you have something, Cindy?
Yeah, so Jennifer, it seems like this test, this singular assessment shift is towards the sort of application performance-based critical thinking. This is stuff that we're already doing. So presumably, we should see our kids being able to keep pace. It shouldn't be as rigorous to them because they have a lot more experience, right?
Yes, if they do what they say they're doing with those kinds of questions.
Okay.
So sometimes what they think of as application-based. And
They being the state?
Yeah,
Okay,
yes,
that's
yes,
test
yes, and
designer.
the test design, right, yeah.
Okay. And so it sort of gets me to think that people who say, oh, well, our kids aren't doing as well, so are the teachers going to be spending more time teaching to the test now?
Well, we certainly
We're
hope
doing
not.
it I mean, we do because we want to be more performance-based, application-based, right? So in that
right.
way, we kind of are teaching to the test, but it won't be as
Yeah, it
artificial.
won't really measure, I mean, when we're thinking about performance-based, we're asking them to actually do something with it, and they're still going to ask a bunch of multiple choice questions on the test, because that's how it's easier to score. And how application-based can that be? And they can only do so much with the very short, open-ended questions. So I think they're trying to move that way a little bit, but I don't think it's a reflection of what our teachers will do. So there will still be some that our teachers are nervous that they still think the community really expects that, and they think they should be doing MCAS prep packets versus authentic learning. So I think the way we just keep sending that message again and again is important. We were in a meeting the other day, Susan, where teachers were in there saying, I'm not even showing my kids MCAS scores. At home, I'm going to start sending a message that this isn't what we do when they come home. We're not even going to talk about this. So some are shifted, some are there, and some are still worried, you know, what the community expectations are around it.
So we're de-staking them. We're lowering
trying
the
to.
stakes.
Exactly.
Right.
These are not high stakes tests for us, and as a result, in the educator evaluation, they do not play a major role in how educators are assessed or
Exactly.
based on their performance. Also, just for future, when we have more of the high school level 2.0, will it affect the scholarship that's available to students based on their 10th grade scores?
So
Because now it's the top two, and so will it be a smaller pool of people
So there are two
available?
separate scholarships that really only apply to tuition at state schools. This year it's a $1,700 scholarship, either one. And some of them include other scores such as SATs or APs. Some are just based on top 25% in the MCAS. So top 25 of your school in the MCAS, which is a little harder, I mean, I think a little higher bar for some of our kids. And so those scholarships only apply if you go to a state college or university anyway, and it's only $1,700. It's a mark of
Pays for a textbook.
I was going to say it's $1,700.
maybe two textbooks.
Maybe even two.
Maybe
I always
one
thought
month
it was, you had to get
dining.
proficient,
Or
you had to get
above.
proficient and advanced on all three, but you had to have proficient at least on two of them or one of them or
There are,
something in order
there are
to be
different
eligible.
criteria for each. Like, one's the Koplik and one's the John and Abigail Adams, and
It's the Adams one, yeah.
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 So will the bar move on that? It might.
Okay,
Um,
just good to know.
yeah. I mean, I think a lot of our kids are eligible for one or the other.
Can I ask one last question about the
Yes.
item analysis? You mentioned we'd look for item analysis, based on the questions the MCAS is providing, to look for holes. What about, will we also be looking at things that MCAS might be overemphasizing that we still want to teach? For example, are they focusing a lot on nonfiction skills, but then de-emphasizing fiction reading and things like that, that we as a district and as a community might still value being taught in our schools?
So I think that's a great question. So what I would say is that there are some things that have been asked on previous MCAS tests that I thought were not very important. And I wouldn't want to spend time having our students memorize that, just for the sake of maybe that one question would come up. For example, on the old social studies test, there was a blank map of Mexico with 4 stars on it, and students had to say which one of these, A, B, C, or D, was Mexico City. You know, that's the kind of thing, I don't think that's important. That's that important a skill, where I would want students to memorize the capitals of where geographically the capitals are of every major city in South and Central America, on the off chance that that was going to be on the test. So there's no longer a social studies exam. There may be one at one point. I think sometimes in the science exams, there are some questions that are too content specific that are not as important, and in order to ensure that our students are prepared to answer every question correctly, it would squeeze out exploration and creativity, and we wouldn't want that to happen. So I think we're making those choices all the time. But there might be certain strands that just are not in the right grade level. And as the next generation science standards are put into place, we will realign our curriculum to be sure that when students are taking the 5th grade test, if there's something we don't teach until 6th grade, that we would consider realigning it to, if we thought it was developmentally appropriate. So I think that the ELA test is really about reading, writing, speaking, and listening. And it used to have a much stronger emphasis on genres, poetry, drama, narrative, and now it's more oriented towards a balance between fiction and nonfiction. But I think our kids get plenty of experience with nonfiction through the study of social studies and science as well. So I'm not unduly concerned that we're going to adjust our curriculum, but Jen's been closer to the ELA curriculum review, and I don't know if there have been any changes recommended in response to analysis of item analysis in MCAS.
No, I think our main changes have come with aligning more with the new standards, which just came out in ELA in the spring, aligned better to the Common Core. That definitely emphasize the nonfiction piece, but does not leave the fiction piece behind. And we needed that. Truthfully, we didn't do enough with nonfiction analysis, so that was helpful to us.
Thanks.
So I think in most cases, our curriculum is higher than, you know, the statewide expectation anyway. Our students do very well on the science and technology comparatively, as you see in the results. A lot of that is the prior knowledge that our students have. Mm-hmm. Their parents take them to museums. They have broad vocabularies. They have, you know, firsthand experience. We have nature areas in our schools. Our kids get outside. And so our students are advantaged in a way that allows them to address some of the science and technology standards. And it's not because we're well aligned with the frameworks. It's an area where we really have a lot of diversity. So some of the tests are a credit to parents and community that has provided rich libraries and resources and experiences, and some of it is a good, strong focus on consistency in our math approach. Our math scores are very high, and you know, all the way through, and very solid reading, writing, speaking, listening. So that should be the focus in ELA, and it is.
All right.
Sorry to have taken so long with that, but I think you might field some questions from community because it is a new format and new reporting, and I just wanted to allay any concerns about it.
Right.
Okay.
Okay. Next we have the policy subcommittee.
So we have 2 members of the policy subcommittee here who can speak to
The entire
where we
entirety
are.
of the
The entire
policy
policy subcommittee is here. So MASC put out a very lengthy guiding document. They had reviewed all of the MASC policies and suggested a number that could be eliminated and a number that would have minor revisions. So we've had one meeting. We started to go through it. It's a tedious process, but there are a couple of other policies that we had mentioned in the last, say, 6 months that we also need to look at. The public comment policy, the policy related to minutes. So that'll be on the next agenda. But we'll have to schedule a series of 3 or 4 meetings and slog through some of this, so you can expect to see some policies surfacing for revision or elimination.
Well, we want it to be sort of our institutional memory and a living document and not just sort of a repeat of whatever MASC has in their model book, so it's important work, and I'm grateful you guys are doing it. I know it can be a little tedious, so thank you.
I'm being the curmudgeon of the group, I
Yes.
should say, since
Yes.
we took us, what, an entire school year? We went through that whole packet, right, section by section?
Right.
So there's some really good questions that Judy and Michelle are bringing forward based on MASC's changes. So you may have a policy in section A, which is kind of the aspirational, foundational stuff, pretty short and sweet, and then something related elsewhere in the back of the policy book with much more detail. So we're having some conversations around, you know, if you have one, do you need the other? And it's good to revisit that. We kind of had those conversations 2 or 3 years ago, so we've got some of that information we can dig out if we need to. But it's good to revisit it again.
So we have some minutes to approve. We have September 12th, and I thought there was a revision on that
The minutes
one.
from the second board meeting here at the table?
The second board meeting?
Yeah, September 13th, our joint board meeting.
Oh, that's, I was, well,
No, they were sent
They were sent out.
separately.
They just,
we
we just don't
sent them
have
out,
paper
and
copies at the
I
table.
asked to have paper copies at the table, which we do. You did that. You did do that. If I can find my stack of stuff from the table. You did.
I don't think she did.
I don't have
No, I was
those.
gonna say
I don't think
didn't.
I did.
However, you did get them all
I got them
electronically.
electronically.
Yeah, I think
Yeah.
I put them, they're probably still in the machine.
Oh, okay.
Ah.
All right. I thought I saw 3 things, and I did, but it's not that.
There was an extra.
Okay.
So those minutes are much like the minutes from the 12th, because with that change in open meeting law, we have to approve, is right by the third meeting after or something like that.
It's strongly encouraged,
Yeah.
yeah, unless we have a reason not to, so, we'll do our best.
Okay.
We'll get them on there we'll get them
Was that
on
the
for the next time.
13th? The September 13th?
Yeah, it was the multi-board meeting, or
Right,
the,
I
yeah,
know, I have it.
you have
So
it, right.
do you need to have them, if they've been sent to you electronically, do you need to have a paper copy here for a vote?
I
Or
mean,
can you still vote?
did you look them over? I mean,
I looked at them.
I read them,
They looked very strong.
okay.
So, would you like a motion to approve as presented digitally today?
Oh,
Wow.
yeah,
We could do that.
we could do that.
Jen's so excited.
And to be attached to the minutes, I mean,
Yeah.
to the.
Yeah,
Mhm.
in the packet.
Written record.
Do we
I
want to
was
do
gonna say-
one set of minutes at a time, or do we want to do all 3?
Well, should we do that one separately?
Do
since
that one
it's
separately since it's
digitally,
digital,
and then-
okay, yes, that'd be
Since I already
best.
made the
Two
motion.
written ones.
Thank you. So,
We need a second.
I guess I
Those
need
would
a
be the
second.
minutes of September 13th.
Correct.
Yes.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Okay. So now we have the 2 meetings that were in the packet, September 12th and October 10th. And the only one that I remember there being any discussion about changing was the September 12th.
Chris had a couple of minor
Both,
edits.
actually.
They both, okay. And, oh, right, October, yeah, okay.
October 12th, so there's an attachment that should be at the back of there. There was a capital projects memo that was part of our discussion.
Yep,
Yeah,
right,
right.
yep,
It's just attaching the memo as one of the documents, right?
correct.
Okay.
And bottom of page 3, I think what we were talking about today, right, was trying to clarify under this capital planning committee update. I don't think that first bullet really needs to be there. What we're
No.
talking about here is this, trying to get the connectivity to the cameras in our schools. So this was something we've been trying to do at VO since it was designed, much less ribbon cut. I think if we just strike the first bullet, it's fine. It's not a police capital request. It's just an ongoing design issue we gotta figure out how to fix, how to work with. And it's still on our radar, and I know we'll talk about it
Right.
again
We're not-
eventually, because Ellen's working on that as well. So if we cut the first bullet and we attach the memo at the back of the minutes, I guess that was it for the 12th.
Okay.
For the 10th, my suggestion was to just change the note for me because I was here for the athletic report and for the executive session. It says I was absent. That's all.
Oh, that's right, okay.
On October 10th.
October 10th.
Yeah.
You got that?
Yes.
Thank you.
And if there's nothing else, I would make a motion to approve those 2 minutes as amended.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
All right. As a chair report, I just wanted to mention that the Finance Committee had a meeting on October 16th, and Chris and I were there to mainly answer questions about the McCall expansion and about the master plan. Chris was really good to sort of walk through what they needed to hear, and they asked a lot of very probing questions, good questions. They wanted to talk about the enrollment projection methods and how we identified different potential buildings. And they also had some questions about the design for phase 1 of the McCall project. You know, are we building in any room for growth the way we built into Vincent Owen when we designed it? And I think it was a very constructive conversation. And then earlier that day, the executive director of the Massachusetts School Building Authority, the MSBA, was here to take an informal tour of Lynch and Morocco schools. State Senator Jason Lewis and Pat Jalen also joined us. Representative Mike Day was here with us for a short time. And I think it was very, I saw parts of Morocco and Lynch that I had never seen before. I'd never been to the lower level of Morocco, which has had some flooding issues over the years, isn't really used. Jack McCarthy is the director's name, did say that both buildings are obviously presenting challenges. He also asked the principals something I thought was an interesting question, which was if they could describe the impact the condition of the buildings is having on the curriculum. You know, he wanted to know what is it, you know, what can't you do and how, you know. So I thought that's something we should maybe think a little bit more about. You know, I think the principals and educators don't really want to focus on the problems. They kind of just want to figure out how to make things work and do what they need to do for the students. And maybe if we could, you know, kind of encourage them to maybe be a little bit negative and think about what the building is, you know, how the building is holding them back, I think that might be a useful exercise. And he also explained that, you know, the MSBA process, you know, has to be the same for all of the schools that they work with. You have to hire an owner's project manager, you have to do a feasibility study, and even if you kind of come into the process thinking you know what you want to do, they do expect you to go through a thorough analysis of options, and it takes a while. And he also mentioned that they get upwards of 80 applications a year, and they really can only fund between 15 and 20-ish recently.
If one's not $182 million.
Right. So
Get a couple of big high schools in there, and that eats up
yeah.
the whole fund.
I think it was you know, very interesting to hear what he had to say, and you know, next time we file a statement of interest, we'll keep what he said in mind. I don't feel too sanguine that we're going to get chosen for Lynch and Morocco this go around. So that's my report, superintendent report.
So just briefly, one other thing about that tour is that the folks from the MSBA wanted to be sure that we acknowledged the hard work of the Department of Public Works.
Yes.
The schools were clean and well-maintained, and the capital folks have spent their money wisely. They are both at the end of their useful life in terms of how long you would expect a school building and its systems without a major renovation or rebuild to occur. But given that, the both schools looked great, and they weren't spruced up for the visit. Both schools are really places where people take pride and do the best they can, given that they're both very old buildings. So I was appreciative of that. I just want to point out that we're still strong members of the MCIEA, and we continue to work with them, the Consortium for Innovative educational assessment, looking at school factors, and looking at training lots of teachers in performance-based assessment. Jen's working hard with a group. They've gone for training recently, and so that effort continues. We still want to measure success in a variety of ways, and so our participation in that group is continues to be strong. I think I gave most of my other reports in the course of the meeting, so unless anyone has any questions. We do have a PD day coming up on voting day. Jen's going to send out a list of, when we get a little closer to the date, list of what we're offering, so if you have any questions on that. I'm always astounded by the great and variety of opportunities for our teachers, and also we're involved with the collaborative and some other districts for low incidence teachers to leave the district and go learn with peers. There are a number of other districts that have a PD day on that day as well. Certainly not enough time, but we do the best with it that we can. And I'm constantly astounded. I was walking down the hallway with a teacher today, and she's taking differentiated instruction grad course with Jen. Are you co-teaching that, or just you?
Just me for that one.
Just you, and then she said, "Yep." And then I'm back tomorrow for sheltered English course. And so our teachers are very dedicated.
Yes, they
Hard
are.
to teach all day and then come here for 4 hours for a grad course. But PD doesn't happen just on
Right.
those PD days. Our teachers are often taking workshops or grad courses, often taught by Jen, Pam, Carolyn, and some of our own teachers, in fact, Katie,
Katie and Catherine, the new STEM.
and Catherine, the new STEM person.
And then
So-
lots of our classroom teachers do things they're really strong in too, so.
So we have, it's very efficient and effective and frugal way to get very high quality PT.
That's good.
Can I ask a
Yeah.
question that I was thinking about
Mhm.
after you were talking about the value of walking around a building and seeing it? Does it make sense for us to do any tours of McCall prior to going to town meeting? Even have people walk through just to see what we're talking about, or the space, or do you have some visuals of students in the hallways and in the library? And
So I think we're planning on having some discussion tomorrow about, messaging and deliverables.
okay.
Yeah.
For town meeting. I'm just shaking my head only because I feel, this is just my knee-jerk reaction. I feel like we've all collectively, there's been kind of a care and feeding about messaging to town meeting about how we're doing and enrollment and what the space looks like. I feel like that's a fairly well-educated group, but if we get the support of town meeting, I hope we get, I'm thinking, to your suggestion, maybe more around the broader community effort, because it's a debt exclusion override in the spring that would come before town meeting, not after, for phase 2. So much like we've opened the doors at the high school, that may be a real welcome suggestion.
Yeah, no, that's
I don't think
a
it's a
good
bad idea. I'm thinking about how would it be most effective. My sense is it would be more about the broader community message once we get past town meeting.
Well, and the other option too is, we did at the high school, is even having WinCam do a walkthrough and do a visual when the students are there to get a sense as to what we're talking about.
I do, town meeting has been very receptive to just photographs too of our schools, including in the McCall ceiling project. The picture was worth 1,000 words, so we can certainly think about doing that as well as part of the presentation under the article. Something else to think about.
Yeah, good idea. Yeah.
It was neat to see that photo on the cover of the Star.
Yeah,
By the
the-
way, like right down the middle where those temporary,
Right.
partitions are in the library.
Yeah, there's a new editor at the Star, and the photographer, and they put into the Star a number of photographs. It's not just the one on the front, but, online. So that's good. It's
Not
helpful.
everyone gets to start.
No, I know. But it is
It's on our
online.
Facebook page too.
It's online, too, so,
Feel free to share.
but that's a
When
great
is your next
idea.
superintendent chat?
I had one tonight.
Oh, that was just tonight, okay.
It was tonight, so I'll do one next month.
Next month?
Hockey rink.
Were you hoping to come and speak?
No, I was trying to remember what your schedule is. So you have an evening and then you have a day?
I have been having a day and an evening, so I'll see what the good timing will be for the next
Okay.
one.
So, the next meetings are November 7th and 21st.
Are we meeting before town meeting on the 6th?
Oh, yeah, we should set that up.
So we should post that in case we do
Yes.
need to meet.
Town meeting? Yeah.
the pre-town
Pre-town
meeting
meeting.
session.
Flying in that
That
afternoon,
evening?
so there's a chance I might be delayed, but
Okay. Well,
I'll try to make it. And we are having a meeting on election day, even though it's a no school day.
yep,
Wait, what was the,
Yeah.
what did you say, Cindy?
I mean,
I think we should, yeah. I mean,
well, it's
not a municipal election.
a municipal election, but yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah?
yep, we are. It's,
No voting here.
it's a no school day, but it's not a voting day for Winchester, so. Something crossed my mind about next meetings.
Meeting before
November
town meeting.
21st, before town meeting. Oh, the thing I was gonna say is, for town meeting, will probably be 6:30?
Yes.
do we have that much to
Which?
vote on?
No, let's make it 6:30 at least.
6:30.
What time's town meeting?
Town meeting's at 7.
30.
So
30?
7:30.
So let's do 7?
7.
Let's do 7, okay.
Okay.
Sold, 7.
Sold.
Mm.
And the McCall article is number 32, and there are a number of things ahead of it that I think might be a little contentious, like
Are we thinking one night?
marijuana things. So I think we're at least looking at 2 nights. Let's look at 2 nights. I think we're looking at 2 nights. I think.
So that would be the 9th?
The 9th. Yeah, we should plan on that.
Okay.
All right.
Would you like a motion to adjourn?
Yes, please.
So moved.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
So, no?
Can you get to the rink?
Yeah.
We're beating the thunderstorms and the weather.
Crazy weather. Boy, we got a monsoon coming in. It felt great, though.
Thank you, Stacy.
We don't have any.